afternoon and welcome once again to the Android EMEA Developer Relations Office Hours Hangout, where we are here to answer any and all questions you might have about developing applications using the Android SDK. So, who's online?
Hopefully this time I've got it all right and set up correctly so that people can get in, instead of just having to look at the YouTube video. So over from the London office, we've got myself, Richard Hyman, and Nick Butcher.
Hello.
Hey guys. And Sparky, of course, just did the intro from our Munich office. So I guess we'll just wait for some people to join us and ask some questions.
So if you're shy and you don't want to jump on the video chat, feel free to either join and mute your video and ask questions in the chat, or you can comment on the announcement post on G+, and we'll try and get to all those questions as well.
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions on Moderator this week, about 13, I believe.
Fantastic.
And,
Good start. Well, whilst we're waiting, do you want to pull one off and run through it?
Sure, let's do that. Let me remember which window it's in. This weird tablet that I've got, it shows more than one activity at a time. I don't know how to deal with it. So,
What tablet's that?
it's something by Apple, a Mac. I think it's called a Mac. Yeah, it's like an activity is not just like a screen thing. They have multiple activities, and I have to choose which one I want to look at.
Sounds confusing.
I understand.
Yeah.
See how that would be.
Okay, so our most popular question of the week was by Michael in Darmstadt, who unfortunately is not able to join us today. And he said, working on a camera app, I have problems getting the optimal picture size for various devices. Basically, you call a camera API to get the list of supported preview sizes, and some devices don't actually work with all the preview sizes that they claim to support. That's a tough question. And the best answer that I can think of in a reasonable amount of time is that for any given device, you only need one supported preview size for your activity, right? I mean, you know, pretty much you know about what size your activity is and when you're constraining it to a device. So I would say if there's a device that you know is causing problems, build a whitelist of problem devices, and on that whitelist say which preview size is going to work for a given device for your activity, and then just don't worry about the other ones. It's not a very good solution. It's kind of a brute force one, but hopefully most devices will support the API correctly most of the time, and those you don't have to worry about. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that one?
That sounds like a good decision.
You listening? Sounds like a good solution, Sparky.
The other thought that I had was, I know that we've got some developers out there who have written really, really good camera applications. Some of them may even be relatively local to one of our offices. Maybe we ought to invite one of them in and have a celebrity guest developer to answer sort of very specialized topic-specific questions, like how to build and how to solve all your problems with the camera API or something like that.
That's a good idea.
Still nobody wants to come in.
No, they're not hiding away. I can see.
No one wants to join the Hangout and expose themselves to the ridicule of their peers. What's with that?
Misha and Stefan are both in the comments saying that they're watching on the YouTube.
They say watching, they mean lurking.
They mean lurking, yeah.
I'm not getting. Oh, you're talking about the Google Plus comments. Right?
Yeah, on the Android developers post.
Yeah, strangely I have trouble seeing those because they're hiding behind my chat window. Hey, I don't actually need to see the video feed, do I? I know what you guys look like.
At the moment, that's probably true. What if it changes?
So yeah, anyone who is watching along on the YouTube live stream, feel free to add a question in the comments, or jump in and ask us live. It's up to you guys. But if there isn't anything else,
Tal is trying to get in. He's having trouble. Rich, do you want to try to invite Tal in?
How do you spell that?
It's complicated. It's Hebrew.
Oh, it's okay.
It's the same guy as last week. Let's see.
I added them into our circles last week.
Anyway, in the meantime, Sparky, do you want to read out the next question in the moderator?
Yeah, I would love to do that. I have to figure out that window thing. Oh, it's not enough to have multiple windows. I have multiple tabs, too. These computers are so complicated. Why can't it be simple like my phone? Okay, is there a way to access the camera preview buffer in NDK without the need to translate the buffer from Java to C++ via JNI? I'm sure that there is, seeing as how the camera is a hardware entity and its driver is down there in the C++ layer. The question is really, once you get it, can you get it back to Java again? Back into the Dalvik runtime? I don't know. It's a good question. This was from OBG1. I suggest that OBG1 should try it and let us know. I'm sure that it's possible. I just don't know how clean the interface is going to end up being. Since I am not expert in NDK myself, I don't really have a more detailed answer to that.
So Andy in the comments is asking, saying he's excited about the SDK R17, but there is no Android 4 x86 image yet. When can we expect that? Have you hopefully tried out the Gingerbread image and the hardware acceleration? And that's what you're excited about. It is much better, isn't it? Assuming your computer supports virtualization. We don't have a timeline for 4.0 image, but hopefully there'll be one soon.
Maybe it's a good time to reiterate our normal opening statements that this is a office hours event. So we're here to talk about Android development, making apps, and so on and so forth. We're not, unfortunately, going to be able to do any product announcements. We're not going to be announcing new and shiny features. So I guess we'll all get the most out of it if we kind of try and stick to that topic as well.
So I'm slightly concerned that people can't join us inside the Hangout.
So Rich, I want to ask you a question. You talked about how the emulator requires a CPU that supports virtualization. When I try to run the Intel emulator with GPU emulation, my video is all broken up and choppy. Does that mean that my CPU is not compatible?
No, there was just this new Intel hardware extraction, the hacks thing that you install inside your environment, and then the emulators can make use of the x86 images on without having to do the ARM emulation, which makes it all a lot faster. But that hacks only works if your CPU supports, I believe, virtualization. So it's a slightly different thing. It wasn't the OpenGL accelerated emulator.
Oh, okay.
It'd be a different thing. It's just if you've got the right CPU, then you can run a much, much faster version of the emulator by installing the hacks layer. But some people stumbled, including myself, on it, because if you go into the Android AVD and SDK manager and you look down and you find the Intel hacks and you install it, if you're using a Mac, all it does is download a DMG file for you, and then you still have to run that DMG file manually out of your SDK directory and install the software. And then from then on, the emulator picks it up, and it's all happy and much faster. I was quite disappointed to start with, because I installed the x86 emulator, and it doesn't seem any faster. But I've missed out this step from the hacks emulator.
Yeah,
I think I'm following in your footsteps, maybe one step behind.
Right?
So I think I posted a link last week in the Hangout comments, which was a page on Intel's website with all the step-by-step instructions to getting this running. So we can perhaps try and find that and post it again. So looking in the comments, we have Gabriella asked a question about trying to make a VPN connection work on Android 3.2. And I don't think you can. I think the VPN support with the pure IP set stuff was introduced in Ice Cream Sandwich. So unless you guys know otherwise, I'm pretty sure there isn't any way to do that in 3.2. Unfortunately.
Yeah, certainly in code.
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe you could do it. You could manually enter one through the network settings, right? But if you're trying to set it up in code, then it should just... I'm just reading the question on the screen over here, sorry. Looking down, reading the question.
You are welcome. Gabrielle says thanks. And Stefan Brunner, I'm probably mispronouncing that, says, Hi, we have a bounded service in our application, which are hosted in our main activity. On some device, our main activity is destroyed after the screen is switched off. I don't think this is Android behavior. So, if I'm understanding that correctly, you're talking about the foreground activity being destroyed when the device goes into sleep. That's pretty surprising to me. I mean, the foreground activity the system will work as hard as it can to, keep that one in memory. It's going to start hiving off processes that are less important, definitely, if it's in a low memory situation. But the foreground one definitely shouldn't be getting to that situation. So unless your service is doing something, I don't know, hugely memory intensive and allocating everything and spinning up native threads and so on, then I can't see why that would happen. I guess the best way to determine this would be to put some logic in your on low memory method, override that method in your activity and find out if that's being invoked and what's going on there. But without any more information, I can't really, not got any more ideas. You guys got any ideas what could be happening there?
No, I agree with you that that it should be. It will go paused, but it should be keeping it alive, or at least in memory. So to have it completely shut down is quite strange.
I guess my thought on that is just that you should expect that the OS can scrap your activity at any time, but that you ought to be receiving those lifecycle events before it happens.
Indeed. Next up in the comments, Stephen Wright asks, is there a way to connect to YouTube in an app and then have access to a person's public playlists? I need to be able to do this in their own app, not by talking to the YouTube app. It's a good question.
Yeah, there is one, isn't there?
YouTube has an API. I'm not an expert on YouTube API, but I believe they have a GData API, which you should be able to get access to that kind of things. So I would suggest you take a look at their API docs and see if they have a nice Java client library you can use.
I'll post it in the chat. They just launched a whole new API last week, which does support embedding inside Android and other things. So you go to
playback, they just wouldn't access the stuff, right?
Yeah, for playback. But if you have a look at developers.google.com/YouTube, the API is listed there, and you can see what's available to you. That's the only API that is available. And if you're not going to use the API, obviously we recommend inside Android that you just link to the YouTube app on the device and let it play. But you can embed videos at least.
So I see in the comments here that Matthew Brown says, R17 broke my code. Grrr. Well, yes. A lot of people are finding that to be the case. It's usually all about the reallocation of where the libraries go. So
yeah.
Just go to Stack Overflow and search for Android R17, and you'll see lots of threads where people discuss how they got around this build issue.
It's basically got to be within the project structure, right? It can't be outside the project structure anymore.
I don't know about that, but...
Yeah, the path used to be set in an environmental variable, and it's now that variable is relative to your project structure, I believe.
Okay. Right, but also just the name change from lib to lib has also got a lot of people.
Right.
And there was one that I just could not get around, and it had to do with some standard libraries. And I got a tip from one reader who said, change your target system from whatever it was to something else and back again. And I did that, and that actually fixed my problem. Yeah. Just sort of firmly reestablishing the linkage to exactly the right Android library was necessary for me.
I shall post the link to Javier's post. Javier's on the tools team, and he did do a post about this on Google Plus recently. I will post it into the comment stream.
Okay. Meanwhile, let's take a look at another question from moderator.
Okay.
Another question. Custom view drawing, sometimes on draw, is not being called when hardware acceleration is turned on. Turning it off fixed the issue with on draw being called regularly. What am I doing wrong? I'm thinking maybe you're not doing anything wrong. It may just be that whatever activity you're doing is not is not causing that part of the view hierarchy to be marked dirty. And so it's just kind of being optimized away. But that's my thought. I don't know, Rich, do you have any particular insight on that one?
Yeah, well, there was a change, wasn't there? There's a great talk from last year's Google I/O by Romangi and Chet, where they talk about the new hardware-accelerated rendering pipeline, and they talk about how previously, if you marked a view as dirty, if you change something in the view, like it would be propagated all the way up the view hierarchy, and it would redraw everything in the child tree. So if you had something intersecting with another view, which it would redraw its siblings and so on. So that's kind of a bug in your code that you were relying on another component being redrawn to redraw your component. And with the hardware accelerated pipeline, that no longer happens. So it could be something to do with that. So I would check out that talk and look at if you were relying on another element being marked as being invalidated to redraw to cause the on-draw in your view. So check that out.
Sounds good. Yeah. Also have a look at display lists. If you can find anything about them, they're in Chet and Roman's talk a lot, and it helps explain what's going on there. Another thing to try, of course, is turning hardware acceleration off. If you're targeting ice cream sandwich, it will be on. You can try turning it off and see if it fixes your errors.
So you did that.
Okay, understand. I was looking through the questions down here, and did it help or not?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, in which case, listen to what the other guys are saying. I should be paying more attention.
So one of my common answers when people have problems with hardware acceleration is I say, well, is your performance adequate without it? If it is, then why worry?
The only reason to worry might be as screen resolutions get even higher, it may slow down, and it'd be nice to have it on. So if you can fix it, clearly better, of course.
Yeah.
Ran, is it possible to... Gabriella, this might be a stupid question, but would you recommend lazy loading of images as an example from a server and showing them as you scroll down a list, or loading a bunch of them from the beginning? So previously, I would always have recommended the lazy loading as you scroll down and showing to the screen and making sure it's on a background thread to ensure that the list is always very smooth scrolling. But recently, Rito did publish an article suggesting it's going to be more battery efficient to download the images at the start. So there is a good article that he posted on that very, very recently. I'll see if I can grab that and put it in the comments thread as well, which suggests if you want to improve battery life, you can download the images at the start.
So I think it basically comes down to an "it depends," annoying answer. There's definitely some advantage in grabbing, the next few images you need, where few is relative to the size of images and how people use your app. So if they're going to be flinging through long lists, and they're going to definitely, almost certainly load it at some point, it might be advisable to batch up those requests and pre-cache them. Whereas, if it's a very, very large resource, which they may never get to, or if they're unlikely to go, down to past a certain point, then you shouldn't be grabbing it. So it's an annoying situation where you need to weigh it up against each other.
And who was that? That was Gabrielle.
I see that Ron has a question. Ron Menor has a question about, is it possible to set a compound drawable on a text view on a widget layout via remote views? This is also a question from the moderator. And I would say the answer is yes, it's possible, because I tried it and it worked. So the question is, can you have a text view that has a drawable element, say, drawn alongside it on the left or right side? And yes, I tried it on my widget and it worked just fine. And
straightforward with no issues.
The Stack Overflow. Let's see. Let me see if I can find it. I found a Stack Overflow article that also gives some discussion of how to do it. So it's definitely possible. In fact, it's not even hard.
There you go.
Samuel from Tanzania. Interested in making Android applications, but the problem is the resources. I think I need a video tutorial for Android, please help. Well, there's a whole load of video tutorials for Android that were published from Google I/O last year. That's a good place to start. If you search for Google I/O 2011, you can look through all the videos there. Every single session on Android that was recorded is available there.
Other resources, if you go to developer.android.com/training, that's the best place to kind of get started for your 101 material. And there's a smallish selection of articles there, but we're actively working on that, so that's going to be growing very, very soon. So there's some good stuff there.
Developers.android.com has a good resources section as well.
Also, if you Google for Bootcamp, Google I/O Bootcamp, there's also some great getting started material under those series. In case you don't know, Google I/O is our annual developer conference, and up until this year we run a bootcamp the day before it starts, which is focused on more beginners material. So if you Google for Google I/O Bootcamp, then you should hopefully find some good resources there.
Okay.
Philip asked when we're coming back to Seabase again. I don't know, but hopefully soon, because I love that place. Seabase is a wonderful hacker space in Berlin, which we've been fortunate enough to visit a couple of times, and I'd love to go back soon.
I'd love to see more hack spaces like that. So speaking of hack spaces, how would you compare Seabase to, say, Campus?
Very different.
Very, very different. That's where we'll just leave it at very different.
Seabase with a suit on. No, Campus is very exciting. It looks very good. I can't wait to start working there. Sometimes. I love that you guys are starting to answer each other's questions in the comments as well. You guys rock. You don't even need it. Don't even need it. You're just answering each other's questions.
Yeah, I think it's time for my nap. You guys carry on.
Another issue, there's some more chat going on about lazy loading of images. Another issue you should really, really think about is the size of your images. A lot of people, I think, download images in full resolution and then scale them on device. Perhaps even down to a small thumbnail or something like that. I know we looked at this when in a recent update to the Android Market application, or Play Store as it became. We were doing something similar, and we actually changed some code so that you now request them of a certain size. So you're actually transferring a lot less data over the wire, and it makes the whole application a lot snappier. It downloads a lot less data. So think about what you're transferring as well. Don't just grab massive resolution images and then show them, and it's a 100 pixel wide thumbnail or something like that. So think about what you're doing there. And the other thing you can think about is if you're looking at ice cream sandwich devices and above, they now support the WebP image format, which is a new image format which is very, very efficient at encoding your images. So if you can send them over the wire in WebP as well, that'll save you bandwidth and make your app feel that much snappier. So think about those kind of considerations.
Yeah, it's a nice suggestion. It's sort of similar to in my little feed reader app. I found that I could reduce the amount of traffic by about 85–90% just by tweaking the URL that I was addressing. Ask for a URL that tells the server how to filter the articles I was looking for.
Brilliant.
Lucas, is there a way to get the Google libraries to the Intel x86 AVD? No, there's not an official way that I know about. There may be some hacky methods of pulling them out of other AVDs, but there's certainly not. At the moment, there's no Google API's version of the x86 emulator that I'm aware of. In the moderator, we've got someone at the top saying, I'm receiving many emails from users who cannot download my paid apps. We haven't addressed that one yet. So you're asking if it's a known issue. We have a page which lists the current Google Play known issues. And if you search for Google Play known issues, it comes up. I'll also post a link to it inside the chat. Google Play apps known.
Now, on the Google moderator, I got that question, and he adds the detail. It says, due to Google Play error 403. I'm guessing that's probably an HTTP error, which means that somebody is failing authentication. I don't know if it's the user, or if it's the developer talking to the server, or if it's some internal system, but somewhere along the way, I think authentication is not happening, and that's what's causing those downloads to fail.
But if you have a look at the known issues page, I've just posted the link onto the chat. There is currently a related known issue that is being looked into. Under, it's just loading up now, but it's under user issues. Receiving download unsuccessful message is likely to be the same issue. But there's also a link in there for reporting issues and for saying that you're having that issue as well. So the known issues page is always the place to check first if you're having any issues with Google Play.
So Philip Stewart asks a couple of more questions in the comments as well. He asks, using a Java library which you can't change the objects therein, is there any easy way to pass these around between activities? So you're basically looking for some kind of like serialization way of passing them around. Any ideas, guys? Have you used any good solutions, or stringify them, convert them to JSON or something like that, perhaps?
No, I guess if the objects aren't serializable, it's trickier. If you can somehow extract all the data from them into byte arrays, pass those around.
One way might be to store them in a content provider and then pass around the URI pointing towards that object. Might be a good way to do it if you look at an ORM framework to help you do that. But if anyone else has got any good suggestions there, I mean, it's a pretty common thing. You know, I think content provider seems to be the most common way I've seen used to handle that as a nice way to pass them around. Philip also asks if there are any plans for supporting Linux for the x86 system image. And I don't know is the answer. Any ideas? I don't think so.
I haven't seen one.
I'm not sure. You might have to ask Intel about that, because I think they do that. Cool. And also Samuel has another question. They say there's Android conferences all over the road. You plan to come into Tanzania? I think you've just missed out. I think we just had a Google G-Day in Tanzania a couple of weeks ago, in which our colleague Peter, who unfortunately isn't here today, went and spoke all about Android and met lots of enthusiastic Android developers there. So shame that it sounds like you missed out on that. I don't know when next we'll be back doing events there, but you probably want to follow our colleague Peter Grayling, who works in Sub-Saharan Africa region on Android. So he would be the best place to find out about that.
Yeah, that's a shame. Junior Tanzania was just like a week or two ago, and it was free to go to. There was an Android track there. Let's see.
Maybe I'll pick another question off the moderator here.
Okay.
Another question is, also by OBG1, there are many deprecated functions with the latest update. Will the Google examples be updated with new ones, like, for example, in-app billing? I would say that depends very much on the sample. Especially if there's an API that's going to have one of these Android training articles written about it, then quite likely a new sample will be written for it. If it's an old sample article that's being superseded by one of these new ones, then no, we're probably not going to touch it. And something which is in between, which is maybe an older sample, but isn't having new articles written about it, then maybe. So there you go. DevRel prioritization in a nutshell.
The other thing I would say is, as and when you come across these problems, file bugs. So if you find one of our samples which is outdated, then please file a bug. Filing bugs saves lives. So if you just Google for Android issues, you can find how to file an issue, and we do read them. So sometimes we can't respond to everything, especially the way Android's developed. We can't let you know we fixed it until we push the next release, in which case tons and tons of fixes get pushed at once. But yeah, please file bugs if you find these cases.
I think I might have seen a sample article around, or a sample application around somewhere that might have had fill parent in a layout XML. Speaking of deprecated terms. Let's see. What is the best way to integrate Google Plus into Android games? I would say add a share action.
Yep. There's no right to stream API or anything like that at the moment. I'm guessing APIs are planned for the future, but at the moment, as Sparky says, the best thing to do is use the share API, the share intent, and that will go through the Google Plus app, and then the same as if you're sharing to anything else. Whoa, someone's just posted an enormous message into the chat window.
Yes.
And
yes.
it must have been Michael back.
TLDR.
Oh, yeah. My guys.
Yeah, this is some of his Stack Overflow questions that we got from the moderator last week.
What the bugs? How much? TLDR bugs. Yeah, we can't really comment on bugs in the platform or what's happening about them, or whether they are indeed bugs.
Search views unclosed.
This is a bit of a hack. Hey, if it works, is it really a hack?
It works on 3 but not 4, so you had a regression.
I mean, bugs like this do get picked up and fixed all the time, but I don't have access to that information. The gallery widget jumps in Android 3, but is fixed in Android 4. That's great.
So in the first case of the search view listener, if you're saying it worked in 3 and is broken in 4, I guess same answer is file a bug for that, or start a bug if there's already an existing one, and hopefully we can get to that in a future update. For the one that was broken in 3 and working in 4, then there's, like you say, not a huge amount we can do.
Of course, what you can do is go through the go to the full source code and embed the component yourself. Android is open source. The gallery widget is open source. You can go and have a look at the Android 4.0 gallery widget, grab it out, see if there's anything that's Android 4 specific in there. It may just be as simple as hardware acceleration being turned on. So using the widget and turning acceleration on might help. But have a look at the Android 4.0 source. It's not going to be backported to 3. And there is no official horizontal list view in Android. The unofficial one on the web doesn't work with keyboard inputs. So yeah, you just need a custom view for it. The closest you get is really a gallery view, which is the gallery widget.
Yeah, or maybe a view pager.
Yeah, view pager can kind of work. It's a slightly different situation.
Yeah, I want to apologize for not looking into these questions over the past week. We got these questions a week ago, but just with the end of quarter madness, I haven't had the time to dive deeply into some of these trickier issues.
Open source PDF readers, anyone? I mentioned a
I know of a licensable one. I don't think it's open source though.
Okay, yeah, he's found licensable ones, but he wants an open source free one that allows it to be used inside a paid app. That's maybe unlikely.
Oh, I want that too.
Another question here. The best thing you can do for that is just keep searching the internet for it. I don't know one.
Just sort of on a philosophical note, I kind of feel like if you're going to be charging money for your software, you probably ought to be willing to pay money to license the components that are going into it. And it just seems a little bit mean to insist only on free solutions to put into an application you're going to sell to other people.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Of course, in this case, he's saying that the cost of the libraries are just way prohibitively expensive to license.
Yeah, that happens. I agree. It's, some solutions are really meant at serious businesses, not really small operators or small or hobby businesses.
Thank you, Emil. Emil's posted a link to one that he's used before, saying it works pretty well and is pretty lightweight. I haven't heard of the APW library before, but cool. Stefan wants to suppress automatic updates from Google Play while the application is running. There's not going to be a way of doing that, but it's why would you want to do that? It seems surely you would want the user to be using the latest version, and if you do an update, they'll get the latest version, and that's great. You just need to make sure you save and resume your state in the appropriate manner. If you want to post further details on why you would want to do that, maybe we can formulate a better answer. Is it a bad idea to use App Inventor from MIT? App Inventor is great, but it generates much larger files than the new. I find App Inventor is great for learning a lot of the constructs of the programming, but it can be a little bit long-winded for actually trying to write a meaningful application.
And to the best of my knowledge, you can't, anything you write with App Inventor, I don't think you can distribute on market.
Really? Have they got a clause in there saying you can't upload the APKs?
My understanding was it had to do basically with the signing keys. That App Inventor doesn't really provide a way to sign the application.
You can take the APK and re-sign it yourself.
Yeah, okay.
I thought from App Inventor you could get an Android project out. Carl. Hello, Carl. Carl Gustav from the London Android User Group. Hi, guys. Am I the only one playing with Vogar to run Android DeX files locally? Probably. You're often the only person to be doing something advanced on Android. Vogar.
Yeah, I've seen it used with Caliper as well for measuring performance and memory usage stuff. I've never actually really dived too deeply into it.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to talk about that at the next London Android User Group when the date is finalised. I very much intend to come along. Where's my list of questions gone? Is selling applications coming to developers in Latvia? Again, as we said at the start, we're not here to make announcements about that kind of thing or talk about product releases.
It's certainly the case that the Google Play people are very well aware of the pain and the desire among developers for more countries to sell their apps.
So Stefan has another question. We have a light and a pro version of our app in store. Is it possible to introduce a shared user ID afterwards so the pro version is able to copy the database files from the free version? So is this, you want the data files to be private to your two applications only? So you certainly don't want them to be public, but you want the pro version to be able to access the light version's data files. I'm guessing is the case. So you've got a couple of possibilities. You can back up to the cloud and then restore it into the pro version. You can have the light version, have in-app billing, of course, to upgrade to the pro version.
Why wouldn't it work just to set the same share user ID? So basically they'll have the same Linux user, so they'll be able to read the same database file. I've never tried it. Sounds interesting. Another approach you could be to just have a permission scheme that lets the pro version just read the data from the light versions, read and write the data from the light versions by a URI.
Yeah, so it looks like you may have answered your own question in your question. Is it possible?
That's what I was trying to ask.
Oh, is it possible to change the user ID afterwards? I see. You didn't do it in the original versions, as it would have worked, and now you've got one, and it's created a user ID, and now you want to.
So what happens essentially if you do an update and add a share user ID?
Yeah, that's going to be an issue, isn't it? Because now the light one won't be able to read its own data files. So you have to get over that hurdle at the start, either by getting people to install the new light one, or somehow synchronizing the files between the old light one and the new light one.
Well, I can take an easy question from Google Moderator.
Okay.
Somebody wants to know, are we going to fix the out-of-memory problem with Droid X? Well, happily, that's not our problem. That's Motorola's problem. So.
Damien says, Lolo, iPhone sucks. Okay, thanks for that.
There's questions piling into the moderator, which are product announcement questions. Please don't ask product announcement questions. We're not going to answer them. Have we worked through all the moderator questions, Sparky?
Pretty close. There's a couple that we haven't picked up. A couple of feature requests. Add a place on Google Play to show only apps that are designed for tablets. That's a rather interesting one. You can certainly you can write an application and target it only to tablets, but there's not a good way to say, you know, show me only apps with an extra large layout. I think it's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, in America we did breach that topic. There's a list inside the Google Play Store in America, which are staff-chosen tablet applications that work well on tablets, I should say, that have been specifically optimized for tablets. But in the rest of the world at the moment, that's not the case.
It's just finding apps that...
Yeah.
And you know, he's specifically asking to not see phone apps, you know, so, yeah.
I'd say also, I think it's the right approach to not have a separate tablet section. I think all apps should respond gracefully to, you know, the size of the device and, you know, have optimized layouts. That's the ideal world, and that's where I'd like us all to be at some point. I understand the pragmatic approach that now you can find it frustrating if you load up an app and it looks bad on the phone. I guess you could contact the developer and say, hey, I'd really like to have a tablet layout, be prepared to pay, something like that. Let them know that that's what you want. There are a few solutions out there, like there's the Tablified app in market, which is you know, a community effort. Some guy, I think, trying to basically draw up a list of all the great tablet optimized apps out there, so you could use something like that, I guess. I don't really know much about it. Ran says that there's a bug in grid view widgets, so I would ask you to file that under the bugs, and we'll take a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Let us know. When you file it, let us know the ID so that we can go and look for it.
Ah. No, I mean, it might be a memory issue. Maybe not enough memory allocated to the emulator.
Good night, Matthew. Hugs back.
The device was given 2 gigs of RAM. I almost want to test it right now, but probably wouldn't be good for the Hangout. I'm not aware of a limitation in the number of pixels for the emulator.
So Roger asks about having doubts about start managing cursor. I also have doubts because I think that's been deprecated now in favor of using loaders, because loaders do all that managing stuff for you, like reconnecting to it on pause and on resume and all this stuff. So I would advise you to move away from the start managing cursor yourself and use a loader, particularly the cursor loader, I imagine.
Yeah. All that stuff that's available in the compatibility library or the Android support lib, that's good stuff. It's there for a reason.
Absolutely. Steve, I'm not quite sure what you mean. He's asked the question again about suppressing updates for his app while it's running. It says because position tracking of our app is discontinued. I don't quite understand what that means. Do you guys get that?
No.
If you could clarify that.
The position tracking of our app is discontinued. Because it stops the position tracking of the app?
Well, I mean, the location provider is still running, right?
It's up to okay. Maybe it's the case that the user has turned on automatic updates from the market, or from Google Play, and it's some kind of tracking app, maybe a run tracker or an exercising app. So as you're running around the park, the update from the market comes in, the application updates, and somehow it restarts your application and you lose all the tracking. Maybe.
Oh, but there must be a way to persist that in shared preferences or something.
Ah, someone says you got it. Yeah, when it goes into on pause and then on Zoom, you just need to persist that state. I understand it's a bit of a funny one. But what happens if a phone call comes in whilst the user's running around the park, or a text message comes in, or some other... Well, a phone call specifically really is that the only notification that will take the screen over. If that would cause the same problem, then you need to fix it in the code base to gracefully handle the phone call issue and the updated app issue.
It's true. Also, you're probably going to get the lifecycle callbacks, right? So you're going to go through on stop. So if you can somehow track whether if you're stopping because the user stopped you, or if you're stopping because the system's stopping you, you might want to, dump the last coordinate and timestamp so that when the app starts up again, you can be given that again, and kind of resume tracking from there. Is an idea.
Feel free to. Yeah, I appreciate that. The Asus Transformer Pad will have these large resolutions. The Asus Transformer Pad Infinity will have these large resolutions. Yeah, sorry, Jonathan Fraser was asking, why does the SDK manager always ask me for updates when I start it up? It only asks you for updates, well, it should only ask you for updates when there are updates. And you do get to choose exactly what you want to install. So I would consider definitely, giving it a reinstall. Maybe it's got a bit confused.
So isn't there an Eclipse pref that you can disable automatic updates? Let's see if I can find that.
Okay. This is a good one for Nick, from Emmanuel. What's the best way to pass messages between fragments?
Okay, well, yeah, sure.
So Emmanuel's asking, with the large use of fragments, have you thought about rethinking to give the fragment a unique context instead of using the activities context? Or is the best way to use the fragment manager in order to sync the fragments and send them each other's messages?
Okay.
We did discuss this.
So context is a fairly heavyweight thing. I think it's a good idea that the fragments aren't context in itself, don't extend context, because that would end up with lots of them being much heavier weight objects than they currently are. And seeing as fragments always exist within an activity, so you always have access to its parent, I think it would be an unnecessarily heavyweight object. So I think that's a good thing that the fragments aren't context generally. But yeah, for inter-fragment communication, generally, use fragment. Yeah, so a good way to do this, most of the Google applications, if you look in the SDK examples, do this, is to set up some kind of callback API, so if you can talk via the parent. So yeah, you would normally, when the fragment is attached to the activity, you inspect the parent and ensure that it conforms to a certain interface, implements an interface. And then you can call methods on the interface to pass it back up to the parent, and then the parent activity can then do what it wants because it has knowledge of all the other child fragments on the screen. So yeah, I generally would go by the parent.
Stefan's added in that his app works fine with phone calls, texts, etc. I'm guessing that's because a phone call doesn't kill the service, whereas an update may actually shut the service down and restart it.
Yeah, it would. So
I have an answer to the question about the updates. If you start up Eclipse and you select Preferences, and then you go down to the Install Update tab, and then you open that out and you go to Automatic Updates, there are a set of preferences that let you control when it will do automatic updates, and you can certainly uncheck the radio button or unselect the radio button saying look for updates each time Eclipse SDK is started. Mine says look for updates every Sunday at 4 a.m., which is a time when I'm not usually busy, happily. You can also simply uncheck the box that says automatically find new updates, and then you'll only look for updates when you ask it to.
The second part of Emmanuel's question is, have you ever thought about enabling by default the auto-update of apps the user installs? Because as you know, many people don't go to market and update them often, so on and so forth. So I think, yeah, in the latest version of Android Market, the first time you tick auto-update, let an app auto-update, it says, do you want this to be the default setting? So I think we're definitely moving in that direction. As to whether that should be the default rather than an opt-in setting, I'm not sure about that, because I think it's a good idea users know about which apps are auto-updating and which apps aren't. Oh, as long as it's a manual update whenever the permissions change as well, I guess. But yeah, we're definitely things are getting better that way.
Which could also answer Emmanuel's question.
What was Emmanuel's question?
Emmanuel's question about how do you stop auto updates when the application's running. Change the permissions of your app. Because if you change the permissions of your app, the app won't auto-update, the user would have to manually update it. So there is a way. That's hacky, isn't it?
Just keep on adding a permission.
Add one, remove one, add one, remove one. Something that's not particularly...
You'd have to keep on adding different ones in case they skip one update and they get the next update.
don't actually do that.
Don't do that.
But
it
is possible.
Please.
Put a screenshot of the loop that the emulator's stuck in.
That's going to be the same again. You might go find a bug. Yeah, if you go to the tools like android.com and look at the issue tracker there, I think you can find a bug for the emulator there.
Actually, it's a good point, because things like the Infinity are coming out. It's a great time to raise this bug about the 1200 pixel displays on Android not loading, and that's toolsforandroid.com. I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, here's a good one. David asks, if you each had one pro tip relating to design, what would it be? Just one?
It would be read Android developer android.com/design.
Yes, that was going to be my one. Damn it! Go read developer.android.com/design.
And then read it again. Work with a designer.
Yeah.
I think
I would.
I think my social shared comment from our tour last year, I kept on saying, you wouldn't let your designer write code, would you? So why are you trying to do design?
Here's one.
People like to say.
All right. One to do with frame rates. If you've got an animation or a view scrolling or a list scrolling, any of these things, that when it's happening the frame rate drops a bit, consider reducing the frame rate of the entire animation to a level that it's consistent throughout. Even if it's slower but consistent, it's going to look better to the human eye than an animation that's smooth and then drops and then goes smooth and then drops. That's not too bad. And of course, make sure you're doing all processing on background threads and set the priority of those threads to give the UI the sputtery, smooth, awesome feel that you want it to have.
Okay, we've all been quite expansive. If I had to give one tip, it would be use the action bar and use it properly. So that incorporates the new navigation paradigms we've been talking about quite a lot, and there's lots of cool stuff in the design documents and the latest updates to the support library which helps you to build this stuff. But I think that's kind of one of the cornerstones of making your app feel like an Android app. So that would be my one tip.
I would say my own bias towards UI is that as an engineer, my user interfaces tend to reflect the way I think structurally about my program. Don't do that. Instead, think about, in an absolutely perfect world, what is the best way for the user to sail through my application, and then implement that.
Okay. And do an X large layout. Fill the screen on tablet with goodness. Don't have. We love tablet apps.
Unfortunately, I think our time together is up. So, thank you all for coming and for asking some fantastic questions, both ahead of time in the moderator and then live in the comments and chat. So, we'll be back same time next week. But yeah, please +1 the YouTube live stream to let us know. The announcement comment to let us know that you watched and enjoyed it, because We need to know who, if this is useful to you guys. And yeah, have a great week.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks very much.